Now that you have worked your way through how to write literary thesis statements and topic sentences, as well as seeing how to transition from one idea to the next, let's look at how to incorporate proper textual evidence into your literary analysis. The most frustrating part of learning to write literary analysis essays, and trying to teach them, is learning how to utilize and integrate proper textual evidence to support your thesis and topic sentence claims in a way that helps instead of confuses the reader. When you struggle with this aspect of your writing, I look like this when I grade your essays, and you look like this while writing them. Writing is difficult and time-consuming enough without these extra frustrations, so let's learn how to avoid dropping what I call quote bombs, which is the largest frustration in writing and reading student writing. What exactly are quote bombs, you ask? Are they like this? Not quite that destructive, but in a reader's mind, close. Quote bombs are what happen when the writer does not properly introduce or set the stage for a piece of textual evidence before quoting it. The reader cannot follow the logic of the writer, which makes the reader feel like a bomb has gone off in their head because they don't know why they're reading the quote in front of them. Something like this. We want to avoid the reader reaching this stage, so we have to go back and learn how to avoid quote bombs and integrate proper cited evidence in a logical manner. To teach you this skill, we will continue to use our sample essay from Dr. Heidegger's experiment. And here again are the thesis statement and first topic sentence from the essay as we have determined them thus far. In order to show you how to avoid quote bombs, first I must explain and show examples of the two most common forms of quote bombs. In the first type, the writer will begin the paragraph with the textual evidence, avoiding a transition from the previous paragraph as well as the intended topic sentence. In the second type, the writer will cite the selected textual evidence directly after the topic sentence with no transition into the idea, cited usually in a full sentence. In each example to come, the thesis will be there to end the first paragraph of the essay, and then we will move into the first topic/body paragraph. Here's an example of the first type of quote bomb. Take some time to read the passage. So what is wrong with this example? Directing you to the arrow, you can see that there is no transition from the thesis statement into the evidence. The writer has completely avoided both a transition and a topic sentence and used the textual evidence to say what the writer wants to say for her. While the choice in evidence isn't horrible, the reader, during the whole length of the cited evidence, is thinking, why am I reading this? What does this have to do with the thesis, the argument? It isn't until after this long piece of cited evidence that we start to see why the evidence was important. To recap, Type 1 quote bombs leave the reader completely disoriented and unable to follow the logic of the paper. Starting a paragraph with a piece of cited textual evidence forces the reader to try to guess how the example fits the argument. At all times, as a writer of literary analyses, you must remember to make your argument's intentions clear to the reader's brain before citing any evidence. Remember, you write for an audience. You must make sure they will be comfortable with your logic. Here's an example of a type 2 quote bomb. So what's wrong with this example? This is a more sophisticated quote bomb. It's closer to correct because, as you can see, the author takes the time to transition from the thesis into the first topic before citing evidence, which is good for orienting the reader. Where this goes bad, however, is in starting the next sentence directly with the cited evidence. Even though we now know what the paragraph will be proving, we do not know why we're reading this exact example in this exact spot, which again leaves the reader feeling like they have to read a really long quotation without understanding yet why it matters. Then again, afterward, the writer finally explains why that text all mattered. To recap, Type 2 quote bombs, while they do a good job of setting the stage with a topic sentence, jump to the evidence too quickly. The reader still does not know why the writer is quoting the evidence she has selected. It is not until after the evidence that the proof's purpose is made clear, which is disorienting to the reader. As a general rule, if you find yourself needing to write this quote, or this quotation, or this example to start the next sentence, you've probably dropped a quote bomb. So how do writers avoid quote bombs and integrate textual evidence properly? First, they make sure to contextualize the reader into the evidence after the topic sentence. Make the reader follow your logic. Second, avoid using textual evidence that stands alone as its own sentence. In other words, try to incorporate your evidence into your own sentence. Third, avoid long chunks of cited material, if at all possible. But if you must cite long, more than 3 consecutive lines, passages, you must block the citation. Shorter relevant examples are best. And finally, try to incorporate the explanation of the quote into the same sentence as the quote. However, simply putting a comma and moving on to the next sentence is incorrect. Here is how I made the first paragraph look when I added in the necessary material to include the textual evidence properly. Take some time to read it now. The changes are in blue. Think to yourself as you read, what has happened to the paragraph since the changes? Here's a rundown of why I made the changes I made. The first change was simply to contextualize from the topic into the first piece of evidence. As you can see, the reader can now follow my logic as I set up each character as allegorical in order to make each piece of textual evidence valid. Then I worked my way into Mr. Medbourne, who is described first. This is a great example of contextualization, something you should do every time you cite something. Also, notice that after my cited example about Mr. Medbourne, I do not end the sentence with a period, but instead place a comma and continue the explanation after the sentence. This makes grammatical and syntactical sense because I wrote when the narrator describes, which forces me to have something to say about the quote in the same sentence. This is an example of both breaking down long chunks of cited text and incorporating both the evidence itself and the explanation of the evidence in the same sentence as the contextualization. A hint: conditional or time clauses are beneficial in learning how to do this. Example words: when, after, until, before, because, if, etc. These clauses are the lock-picking system to solid analysis writing, and writing in general. Next, I'd like to show you that occasionally you can explain a quote before you even cite the evidence. I've done this here in moving from the Colonel to Mr. Gascoigne, our corrupt politician. Here we move logically from one character and problem to another, finishing with the quote. This method usually only works in the middle of examples like this paragraph. This is not good for standalone or single examples. And finally, at the bottom of the paragraph, notice how I simply end after I complete my Widow Wycherly example. I have no recap or transition. Why? While this is something you did learn in middle school writing, it is, like single word transitions such as first, next, then, finally, something you should learn to evolve beyond. In good analysis, we allow the paragraph to simply end, then transition into the next idea during the next topic, like so. This would be the first sentence of the second paragraph. See how it transitions from the last thought and also introducing the new topic of the next paragraph right there in the same first sentence? This is what you should emulate. I hope this video has helped with your understanding of including textual evidence. Now it's your turn to try. Please read the following instructions and give it a try. Good luck!